It's a tale of two coasts. Warmer, dry, but some weekend rain coming to the east, while we have rounds of heavy rain and heavy snow in the west, and that continues into next week. And maybe some severe weather somewhere in the middle. All that. And the long range, right here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Thursday night, the 29th of December, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in
West Babylon
New York, in Southwest Suffolk
County,
on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut
area,
tri-state area.
tri-state area.
And
yes.
they are Long Island's largest.
Oh, is it my turn again?
Yes.
They are the largest supplier of rock salt, pelladough. If you're planning to get out there in a winter storm, you need Omni. You need to get the pellets. You need to get the snowblower.
Yes.
You need to get anything to fight the winter, which ultimately and eventually will come, but not in the foreseeable future.
Yes.
Batteries, anything you need and anything you want.
That's right.
A generator.
Yes.
You want a generator, you can get a generator from them.
Yes. And let me finish the commercial here. 631-756-1125. Nowhere can you find better prices, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Ladies and gentlemen.
Not bad.
Thank you.
You did good. So here we are on a Thursday night. Good evening to everybody on the chat board. Joe Rayo sits on the right. Joe Cioffi, that's me. I'm sitting on the left. Maybe next week I'll flip it. And welcome to everybody on the chat board. This is the last show of the work week. We will be off tomorrow and Saturday, and we will be back on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Welcome to new subscribers. Welcome to those of you who are lurking in the background. And if you like the show, be sure and hit the like button, because we love it when you hit the like button. And David Fuller, an early super chat hit here. And rumors have it that we could have something around here between the 7th and 9th. I'm sorry, you mean thread the needle. Let's hope so. Okay, well, we'll see. We have things to talk about. Telly on the chat board has it already all figured out that it's not an I-95 winter. You know, I love, I just love that people make these unequivocal statements based on what? I don't know. You know, they say things like that. Oh, and I caught a troll today. Nothing against you, Telly, but you know what? You don't know yet. You don't know. I don't know. Nobody knows. I did nail a troll today on my Facebook page. One of these people that I'm not a negative, Joe. You know me. I'm a humble person.
Yes.
You know, I listen to whatever anyone has to say before I tell them they're wrong. And this is somebody who perpetually just posts about, how it's a blowtorch. The winter's a blowtorch. The winter is over. The winter is not only has, apparently this man counts a calendar in a different way. There's only apparently 1 month left to winter. And he, and I challenged him on it, and I just told him, if this is all you're gonna do, post this crap on my Facebook page, just go away and go elsewhere, among other things. And he said how he forecasted December to be a blowtorch, and all the folks all the folks that disagreed with him have now climbed into a hole. And I happened to go look at some New York City statistics. Not counting today, tomorrow, and Saturday, but through yesterday, New York City's for the month of December is running over 2 degrees below normal.
Right.
Bridgeport's 2.5. I mean, the few places were up close to 3 degrees below normal. This month has not been a blowtorch by any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that has not been, not at all. Yes, we had that interval, 4 or 5 days of abnormally cold conditions last weekend, but much of the rest of December has been, near normal. Now we're warming up. Tomorrow, temperatures will be in the 50s. But even with all of that, even with the fact that we'll finish the month probably with unseasonably mild temperatures, it still won't be enough to get rid of the temperature uh, deficiency, if you will, below normal. And I think when it's all over, said and done, Joe, New York will probably be somewhere. New York Central Park will probably be somewhere between 1.5 and 2 degrees below normal. Definitely not a blowtorch month.
Right. Well, he's got two additional comments here. He says, "What good does it do if the precip doesn't couple?" Well, that's always a problem. That's a problem every winter. I don't see what makes this winter any different than any other winter. It's a well-known problem along the coastal plain. If you want it, if you want nonstop snow, you got to go. You got to go up into either the northern Maine or up into northern Michigan, and or maybe even into northern Montana. But that's always the case. And then what else? He says the worst of the cold never hit I-95. It was all west of the mountains. Well, I guess mid to upper single digits for lows and temperatures not getting out of the teens. That wasn't enough for you. I mean, frankly, even in the coldest of winters, you usually only get a handful of days that are like that. But you know what? You could always come to North Georgia because I got the worst of the cold. I got to the mountaintop right near me got to 9 degrees below zero. So, I don't know what to tell you. I can understand the snow lovers' frustrations, just sort of being angry at everything and marching to the edge of the cliff. But it's not going to do you any good. I will tell you that from what I looked at last night and what I looked at today, I will go back to what I said yesterday, and I will say it again. I think starting late next week, as the polar vortex rotates around and begins to stretch, we are going to get out of this La Nina, because what we have right now is a typical La Nina pattern. But it isn't going to it is going to break down. I mean, I don't know ultimately what it's going to evolve to, but I'm actually a little bit more bullish, Joe, that we're going to get cold for the middle part of the month and beyond. Uh, because of what I'm seeing upstairs, it appears to me that at this, from what I've seen, that the change in the polar vortex upstairs is going to try and couple with the bottom part of the atmosphere.
Well, the folks over at CPC Climate Prediction Center over the next 8 to 14 days, in terms of problematic conditions, temperature-wise, no hazards are posted right on through the 12th of January.
Okay.
In other words, they're not anticipating any kind of outbreak of very cold weather. But that, I think, I looked at the maps today as well, Joe, and I think that around, if you take this at face value or whatever, around the 9th or 10th or 11th, there will be, I don't know if it's going to last much longer than a few days, but I think the next chance or the next surge of unseasonably chilly, if not downright cold weather, probably will come our way, about the 9th, 10th, 11th of January. But again, the folks over at CPC say, no, it's going to stay above normal in this area right on through the 14th, right on through the 12th of January.
Well, I would say this. I don't think we're not going to get another blast like we got in December. I don't think we're going to get a blast like that now. Okay, that might come later after that vortex kind of aligns. But I do think that we are going to trend back toward at least seasonal. I think we should be able to get back to seasonal, or plus or minus a degree or so of seasonal. Um, and it's not going to come in one day. I think it's going to probably come in steps. But I'm kind of liking what I see on the long range overall. For if you're a winter weather lover, I honestly don't think you're going to have this pattern that's set up right now really last much beyond the first half of next week, and then we're going to start to see it change. And now it's going to be a grind. It's going to be, as always when you get these pattern changes, it's a grinding process. It's rare. Actually, the pattern change that we had from the bitter cold to what we have now was fast, because that occurred because we had that major storm go to the lakes. It blew up the block, and that was the end of that. But this one's going to probably take a little bit of time to evolve. But I see the East Pacific Oscillation is going to go negative, which to me is the most important of the teleconnections. And look, the bottom line is I could be completely correct in terms of what my forecast is in terms of the overall trend as far as the temperatures are concerned, but uh, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to come with any kind of big storms or even small storms. That's a short range issue, and we'll deal with that when we get there. But I do think we're going to get rid of this last gasp La Nina pattern that we have right now.
Yeah, it is. Apparently, the folks at CPC are saying that it's going to sputter and probably completely be gone, perhaps by mid or late winter. So we'll see what happens.
Steve Lapointe hitting super chat saying Telly's in Salisbury, Maryland, which is on the coast. Well, you need it perfect there to snow where you are for the most part. So you have much more work to do. Johnny Quest also hitting super chats, and I said one good thing about the mild weather and clear skies, he could use his telescope to see all the planets. I forgot to tell you this. You would have appreciated this on Christmas Eve night, or it might have even been Christmas night. One of those two nights. Joe, the sky was so clear, and it had to do with the quality of the air mass coming down from where it did in the Arctic air. But the sky was so clear, the stars were amazing. How much I could see star wise. It was beyond beautiful. I must tell you that. And in fact, because my house is on a hill, and the house to the next to me is above me, because there's a bit of a mountain ridge that I'm on, and it goes up. So when you look up to the sky, you see his very large oak tree, which of course is devoid of leaves. The stars were so bright that it actually, the illusion, Joe, the stars were so bright that it looked like they were actual lights, little flickering lights on the tree branches. I had to do a double take. I thought, does he have lights? Am I looking at stars or am I seeing lights? And then I went up the side road so that I could get a better line of vision, and it's like, no, those are the stars. It was just the right angle, I guess, and the stars were just so bright. It really was. It was just inspiring.
Well, at this time of the year, when we get into the winter season, as you are well aware, Joe, the colder the air mass, the less capacity it has to hold moisture, and that's why in these very cold nights, there's not much moisture to deal with, and so there's not as much haze. The transparency is probably as good as it'll get for the entire year. The only thing that's a drawback is that if you have a telescope and you're outside on those nights when the transparency is magnificent, you could see even the faintest or dimmest of stars. The problem is that usually on such nights, the upper level winds are so active that it causes the stars to appear to scintillate or twinkle. You think about the nursery rhyme, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." And that is the absolute worst type of night. It may look beautiful to you, but if you have a telescope, it's terrible because you aim it at a star or a planet and the air is just boiling. And you see the images just, oscillating or vacillating, or literally it looks like, if you're looking at the planets, it looks like they're boiling. You can't get a really good, clear view. Your best nights, believe it or not, are on those hazy, warm, kind of humid nights that we get in the summertime. You don't see as many stars, and it's not, as brilliantly clear as you have on a winter's night. But because the air is so stagnant, so still in such air masses, that's when you get the best views through a telescope. But it is beautiful on a night, a winter's night. And tonight, if you look up toward the half moon after the show, that is, unless you've already looked at it already, and wonder what that bright silvery star is to the upper right of the moon, that's the biggest planet in the solar system, Jupiter, standing out like a sore thumb right near to the half moon, the first quarter moon. So if you have a chance, get on out there. We also had a beautiful sunset here in the tri-state area this evening, Joe. So it's nothing like having those beautiful winter nights to really, bring out the nighttime sky, as you mentioned down where you are, and even up here where I am.
Yeah, broke 60 today here, which was nice. And even this morning it was 38, which is a far cry from 18 yesterday, and then the single digits going back from over the weekend. Just do a little bit differently tonight. Let's start with as we were talking about the long range. Let me bring up the what's going on in the stratosphere and kind of go over what we were talking about yesterday. So this was on Monday, and you can see the polar vortex here in the stratosphere, and it's wrapped up pretty much in a almost not quite a perfect circle, but it is wrapped up like a tight little ball. And I'm going to draw the circle again because I kind of muffed it here. Hold on a second. So, there's the shape of the vortex, and then we have the actual low center, which is sitting right over northern Greenland. And when it's wrapped up like this, this is what you see usually in a typical La Nina pattern or in a strong El Nino pattern, where you get the polar vortex just wrapped up. All the cold air is up in the Arctic and in northern Canada. There's no displacement of cold air further to the south. Now, this we got there only early this week, and we're going to now, beginning today, we're starting to see the polar vortex actually kind of weaken a little bit, and it starts stretching, and it begins to rotate in that stretch, with one end on the north coast of Siberia, the other end on the north coast of Greenland, and it stretches out a trough that drops southward down into the eastern part of the United States, so that when we get to the end of the forecast period, which is 2 weeks from now, it's in a weakened position, and the flow, because of the tilt, Joe, is coming from the Arctic. Now, this is again at the stratosphere, and remember that the question is going to be, does this all couple down to the lower part of the atmosphere? When we've seen this type of alignment in the past, it has been bullish for colder weather to come into the United States. It's no longer wrapped up like that tight little ball. It's stretched out in a almost northwest, southeast position. And this brownish area you see here, if we run this through, there's actually a couple of them. We get some attacks of the polar vortex coming from very warm air in the atmosphere that's attacking that vortex and causing it to remain in a semi-weakened state. And that is a bullish development with respect to a colder pattern. And nothing has changed. Just looking at this run to run to run to run, it's very consistent in doing this. And I feel confident in my idea here that we're going to start to see changes get underway late next week. At this time next week, we'll start to begin to see. You'll see it on the maps in the short range, the sort of gradual stair-step decline in the temperature pattern. Now, whether this is going to be accompanied by any kind of storminess is a whole nother matter.
And on the chat board, rooting for this is Christopedia in block letters. She says, "Bring on the polar vortex!" LOL, with a couple of polar bears, I might add.
Nice.
And it has nothing to do with Mr. Alonso on the Mets. But anyway, you're right, Joe. And I could remember in the year of the 4 nor'easters that we saw the polar vortex undergo a similar type of configuration. Although that year, that time, it stretched to such a point that it actually split in two. I don't think this is going to happen.
It might be, yeah, it might be too early for it to do a split because this is climatologically the vortex is in its strongest position state from now up until the early part of February, and then it starts to weaken slowly. But that's to take us to the process of going from winter to spring eventually. So we'll have to wait to see what this looks like at the end of the month. If we're still getting these warm intrusions and these warm attacks into the polar vortex at the end of January, then you might maybe we could see a split again sometime in February. But yeah, that's all in the long-term speculation department. But I like this setup here for winter weather coming into the east. Certainly for the cold. And by the way, uh, I know back weeks ago you were talking about uh, maybe at some point getting a very very cold blast of air. Well, you got the one right around Christmas time. Uh, this one, the idea that maybe in the latter part of January that we could get a pretty impressive blast of air coming down out of Canada. If this holds this way for a period of time, which some of the longer range models are suggesting that it may, you might get that polar blast you were talking about for the latter part of January.
Well, like I said, after what we went through last week, and you said too that it pretty much emptied out all of the cold air that was up over the polar regions. It's going to take time now to recycle and recoup all of that, and it might take about a month. And if that be the case, then toward the end of January, we may, as you just suggested, may get another polar blast. And since it comes in January, which is the coldest of all 12 months, the next blast might actually be either equal or maybe even rivaling what we just went through. I hope not, but
Yeah.
but we'll but again, if we're going to see any kind of a return or a repeat to much colder weather, it certainly looks like it would have to wait until the second half of January. Although, as I said, I think in looking ahead, shorter term, maybe around the 9th or 10th of January, there may actually be, maybe for a 2 or 3 day period, a surge of colder air. Certainly by that time, I think it'll be the coldest air mass that we have seen since last weekend. I mean, we're warming up now. We're going to have a very balmy set of days coming up over the next week or so. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, Joe, because tomorrow, I think in parts of the Hudson Valley, including my area, we might even be looking at temperatures in the mid to upper 50s tomorrow. My God, that's going to feel like I'm going to be in Miami or the Bahamas tomorrow with those kind of conditions after what we went through last week.
Yeah, no question. Like I said, I got to 60 today, so I was happy. Satellite tonight. We're going to come back to the models in a little bit. The satellite tonight shows much of the East Coast, except for maybe up in northernmost New England and well up into upstate New York, where there are some clouds, and there was actually some snow going on in parts of northern Maine today. It is just clear and beautiful, just a great night. A little bit of a chill in the air in most places, but certainly manageable and a far cry from the Arctic cold that we saw just days ago. Meanwhile, we do have some thunderstorms and a lot of lightning showing up, a lot of lightning strikes there in East Texas. So this is where SPC has a severe weather risk. And of course, you continue to see, because the trough is in the western part of the United States, and we've got storm after storm that is coming into the west with heavy rain and some heavy mountain snows. During some of these storms, it's colder at sometimes and warmer than others. This particular surge is coming in when the air is not all that cold, so the snows are just being confined to the elevated areas. But the subsequent systems might have some slightly colder air to deal with. There's no Arctic air mass in the west, in the northwest part of Canada that's kind of pressed. Sometimes you get Arctic air that bleeds southward into the west when you have a trough in the western part of the United States. We don't quite have that this time around. And on the radar, we're seeing another big surge of rain has come into California, extending all the way down now south of Los Angeles with heavy rains in northern California and southern Oregon. And well further inland in as you move into Utah, northern Arizona, and then back up into western Washington, you got some snow going on there. There's a stripe of snow from northeasternmost Nebraska northeastward to northeastern Minnesota that's not producing very much. And here we go in East Texas and northwest Louisiana into Arkansas. We've got bands of some downpours and thunderstorms. These were places that were in the teens and single digits just a handful of days ago, and now they're warming up and raining. And in the Northeast now, the snow has pulled out of Maine, northern Maine, and the rest of the radars are nice and quiet.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice little respite from what we went through. Although as a nice little contrast here, whereas we had to deal with cold and eventually a changeover to snow, however slight it was in our area, certainly a lot more well north and west of here, especially toward Buffalo and Watertown. And now we're looking at a New Year's weekend where it's going to be considerably warmer and also considerably wetter. We're going to have showers, I think, here on Saturday, mainly in the afternoon, and that'll carry over into Saturday night. And then, hopefully, if everything keeps on trucking, Joe, because it looks like a rather progressive pattern, it could very well turn out to be no worse than partly sunny, maybe even mainly sunny here on the first day of the new year on Sunday, along with a continuation of mild temperatures in the 50s.
Yeah, I'm looking at the the rainfall for Saturday. Really doesn't look, all that much. Maybe initially I thought maybe we wind up with a half to 3/4 of an inch. Um, Mostly on the new runs here, just seeing about a quarter to a half, maybe a little bit more when you add the day two and day three time frames together. But in the west, you can see the precip that is for day one, which is going to be at this time ends at this time tomorrow night. So several inches in parts of Northern California. And day two, it continues. Day three, it shifts southward. Day four, here comes the next surge. Day five, day six, day seven. So a very, very wet pattern. And unlike, again, we talked about this last night, it's a little different this time around with this La Nina at this point because usually when it's a La Nina, California is starving for rain. I think they didn't, last winter was not a big winter for them rain-wise, but this one's actually shifted a little bit further south. That's another reason why I think this is going to wind up playing differently once we get the rest of the atmosphere to cooperate, particularly the Northeast Pacific. But overall, over the next 7 days, a lot of precip in the Gulf states, the lower Mississippi Valley, into southern Illinois, southern Indiana, across into Alabama, Georgia, western, south, and North Carolina. We're looking at several to 5-6 inches of rain in some places, according to WPC. For the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic for the next 7 days, it looks like it's anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter in some areas. And a big trouncing continues in the west over the next 7, with a stripe there of 10-inch plus liquid precip amounts in parts of the Sierra Nevadas and California. Most of that will be snow. Not all of it, but most of it will be snow. And even on the coast, Joe, they've got some of these 5 and 10, these 10-inch plus areas highlighted in parts of North Carolina, the North California coast, and then all the way down even into Southern California. There's a stripe there of about 5 to 7 inches. So they're going to get a ton of rain out of this.
I don't know how long it's going to take of this type of weather before the severe drought that has been up for many, many months begins to alleviate or abate to a degree. But you're absolutely right that this is definitely not La Nina pattern. This is more of an El Nino pattern. And in fact, Joe, I'm thinking back, and I may be wrong because I don't have the specific records in front of me, but I think last year California got off like gangbusters with lots of wet weather, lots of storminess in December, and then just very quickly, it was almost as if someone turned the spigot the other way. Everything kind of dried up. There was not much to talk about or write home about in January or February. So it'll be interesting to see if this pattern, well, we know it's going to carry over into the first week of January because, as you just pointed out, there's one after another after another. But whether or not this will carry right on straight through, that'll be another question. But again, I also mentioned that this La Nina pattern may fade away by midwinter, and that may help to open the door or keep the door open for more wet weather makers slamming into the Pacific coast in California. And of course, naturally, they will be upset and complain about it because whenever this happens, there's always flooding, there's always mudslides, there's always all kinds of problems. For whatever reason, they always highlight Malibu. Malibu always seems to get the worst of these weather makers. But again, they need the water, they need the moisture. This is the season for replenishment of reservoirs and watersheds in and around the California area. So regardless of the fact that it may be problematic at times, hopefully this will continue and hopefully it will alleviate their drought situation by the end of the season.
Next 3 days, snow-wise from WPC, probability of at least a couple of inches, and it's not really overly impressive. Again, this current surge is moving through. There's cold air, but it's not high-quality cold air for them. But certainly the mountains will do well. I'll just pop up the probability of at least 8, and you see a few strips there in northeastern Utah. Eastern Idaho, western Wyoming, and a stripe there in the Sierra Nevadas. Again, this only takes us through Sunday evening. There's more to come after that. And in the long range, as we take a look at this is Sunday into Monday. The probability of, it's all pretty much in the west, folks. The probability of at least, let's say, 3 coming into areas again coming out of the West Coast and moving more into the Central Rockies, Wyoming, Western Colorado, and into Utah, into the Wasatch. And then Monday into Tuesday, high probabilities now being indicated for Nebraska and South Dakota. Starting to look like they're going to probably have another significant snowfall and wind event, although it doesn't look quite as intense as what they had going into Christmas, and when they had blizzard warnings up for the better part of a week, if you recall, the week before Christmas. And then on Tuesday into Wednesday, it moves up into Minnesota and into northernmost Wisconsin and Michigan. And then we have Wednesday into Thursday, and here we go with another big surge in the west of already having probabilities of 70 to 90% being indicated in some areas. So let's go to the upper air, and this is what it looks like today with the ridge in the east. There's a little upper high analyzed off the North Carolina coast, and you see the troughing in the west. There is no Canadian connection to bring down colder air, so you get all this Pacific air. And of course, we get the warm part of that Pacific air. Some of the colder marine air that comes into the west has some impact. But all the cold air locked up in Canada. But we start to see things happening, again, not immediately. As we go through Friday, that energy in the west, some of it gets kicked out into that ridge position, which flattens. And there's a short wave. It's not a healthy short wave, really, but there is a little trough that's coming through, and that brings the rain into the east for later Saturday into early Sunday. Meanwhile, another trough drops into the west, and got a little bit of a wrapped up cutoff low there near the Aleutians. And that's an important development over the weekend, because now you start to see the energy, instead of coming into the Pacific, both in southwest Canada and down into southern California, you're starting to see pressures rise back over into western Canada. So that's important. And the jet is so far south that it's kicking weather systems along uh, further south than it were, say, if a typical La Nina pattern where you would pull it up more to the north. Well, those pressure rises in the Pacific Northwest continue and actually strengthen. Now we're into next Friday, and there's a closed upper high. And the reason why I'm paying a lot of attention to this is the fact that that's you need those pressure rises up in the Northeast Pacific and in Western Canada to open up the doors for cold air. That's your negative East Pacific oscillation signature, and you do start to have, this is next Friday the 6th, you do start to have now a bit more of a Canadian connection coming down. It's not impressive, but it's certainly better than what you have right now, which is none. And over time, if the GFS is right, some of the longer range models are correct, that those higher pressures in Western Canada hold, and we get more and more troughing into the eastern part of the United States as we head toward January 13th and 14th and beyond. This is, if this is close to what it looks like, Joe, by the time we get to the middle part of the month, this is not this is a colder pattern that's emerging here.
Yeah, and they give some hope for those who are complaining. I just literally 5 minutes ago, Joe, I posted on my Facebook pages. I said, by the way, if you look up toward the half moon and to the upper right of the moon, we have the planet Jupiter, the biggest planet in the solar system. And then other people, making comments like, "Oh, I was wondering what that was," and blah, 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 blah. And then right in the middle is one guy who always is bugging me about winter weather. His name is Vito Billy Spano. And what did he say? He says, "Joe, when is it going to turn cold and we can have snow again?" That's, I mean, some of these people who are snow lovers, snow weenies, or winter weather lovers, that's the only thing on their mind. There's nothing else can get in their way. They have tunnel vision. That's all they're thinking about is, when is it going to get cold again? When are we going to get another shot at some snow? When is it,
November 1st, Joe, from Halloween to Memorial Day. It has to snow every single day from Halloween to Memorial Day. Otherwise, the snow season is a disaster.
Right.
Anything less than that to the snow weenie is a disaster.
Magnolia P writes, Denver metro area is above average for snow so far. Very different from last year. Last year, I think Denver had to wait until like the middle part of December to see their first sticking or significant snowfall.
Yes.
This year, from what I heard, Denver now has twice as much snow, or more than twice as much snow as they normally would have in December. And the snow that accumulated today, or the last 24 hours, 8 inches, coming off of relatively mild pattern. It was a very wet, slushy consistency. 8 inches of white concrete, if you will, I suppose. And Denver's a crazy place. I mean, you could have, especially in the late winter and early spring, you could have an 80-degree day one day and down to 20 degrees with heavy snow the next. And you could have that even in September and October. We've seen that happen.
Yes, we have.
And that's what they're going through right now. They're going through a snowy weather pattern, albeit it's not the kind. It's that snow that they have today is perfect for making snowballs and snowmen. But it's not that puffy, powdery type of snow that you'd like to see during the winter. It's very easy to get rid of with your snowblower. This, I'm sure, that Magnolia P will attest to this. It is a very difficult type of snow to move around,
Yes.
from what I hear.
And that snowblower was a gift from Omni True Value Hardware of West Babylon, New York. So, anyhow, here's what it looks like. It's pretty much a done deal with what's going to happen here. We've got no problems in the east. Friday should be a mostly nice day, up and down from Maine to Georgia. You see where the rain is tomorrow with the thunderstorms tonight into tomorrow morning in eastern Arkansas, Louisiana, and some heavier rains extending all the way up into southern Indiana. Some thunderstorm development tomorrow in Mississippi and Alabama. Probably falls apart before it gets to me. but still dry in the east. And it looks like this is at 1 p.m. on Saturday. You've got showers in North Carolina, Virginia, back through West Virginia, Ohio, and then also up in western Pennsylvania and western New York. Those come in Saturday night at 7, and by 1 a.m., it's done, if you believe this. So it's quite possible that the rain could move in and move out before they drop the ball in Times Square, or in the case of here in Northeast Georgia, or actually in Brasstown, North Carolina, where they do the possum drop at
Yeah.
midnight, or at least they used to. I don't know if they still do. But here you also see in the west the moisture coming in. Now this is going to set up the system that comes in on Saturday night. Moves into Utah and then into Colorado. You got that 91 low there in eastern Colorado Monday afternoon, and you're going to start to see severe weather possibly break out in eastern Oklahoma down into Texas. SPC's already got a risk area put up, and you see how the model just blossoms this up in southern Missouri down into northwest Louisiana with a 990 low there in northwest Kansas. That moves up to the northeast into Wisconsin. We get looks like some kind of warm front goes through here on Tuesday in eastern Pennsylvania and southern New England, and then maybe a few showers into Wednesday. That front's going to stall. You got a colder high coming down. There's probably going to be 2 waves of moisture, one for Wednesday night into Thursday, and then the models are keying on some kind of second wave that develops. And I don't know if you saw the overnight run last night, Joe, that gave 2 feet of snow to Boston and to central and eastern Long Island out of this, which I saw that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I saw that this morning. I had a good laugh, but there is a second wave that's going to be coming up. There is going to be some colder air. You see the high to the north. I'm going to switch over to the ones where you could see the blue lines where the cold air is. But you got that high, 1043 high that extends from Superior to eastern Canada. So there's some suggestion here for maybe late next week that, if you get a weak enough wave with some overrunning and you get that high to build that way, maybe you'll get cold air to bleed down and perhaps get a surprise. I mean, GFS and even the European last night gave a little bit of snow down to the coast for late next week. To me, the more important thing is the fact that we're seeing now, because of what the upper air is doing, it's a colder look overall going forward. You notice, by the way, the 540 line, this is January 10th, that 540 line gets all the way down to me in North Georgia. So it's a lot different than what it is now, and it hangs around for a while. And there's an even bigger high, Joe, right around the 13th, 14th of January on this run that has a 504 thickness to New York City by the time we get to Friday night, the 14th of January. And there's another cold high behind that one. So you see how the surface plays out, folks, with what I showed you on the upper air before and what winds up happening in the surface. It's a completely different look here. So if you're a cold weather, winter weather lover, be patient.
Relax.
Relax.
Relax. Please.
Be patient. It is these these meltdowns, Joe, that they have really are they're so silly. They're such a waste of energy. I mean, as if you could, that's going to change the outcome by somebody having a meltdown over this stuff.
I want to give you an idea. You mentioned, was it the possum drop?
Yes.
Now I've looked this up now, and I have found that in the state of Georgia, in Atlanta, they lower a peach as part of the annual peach drop, which has been held at Underground Atlanta. Underground Atlanta? What is Underground Atlanta? I've never heard that before.
Hold on, it rings a bell. Let me do just really fast. I want to leave this out.
Oh, that's a shopping. It's a shopping and entertainment.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that's what they do in Atlanta. In Cornelia, Georgia, they host a Little Red Apple Drop and dance in honor of the region's apple growers. In Duluth, Georgia, I didn't even know Georgia had a Duluth, a disco ball.
As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to Duluth, Georgia 3 weeks. Wait, Saturday's the 31st, 7th. So 3 weeks from Saturday, I'm going to be going to Duluth, Georgia for a model train show
Oh,
with
okay.
with my grandsons.
Well, in Duluth, Georgia, they drop a disco ball that they call the Soaring Spirit Ball. In Gainesville, Georgia, the Chuck the Chicken Drop, which started in 2009 to benefit the Humane Society of Northeast Georgia. Macon, Georgia, they're dropping a 6-foot wide lighted ball with metal cherry blossoms and pink lights, dropped in honor of the International Cherry Blossom Festival. Marietta, I didn't even know. All this is happening in Georgia, folks. Marietta, Georgia, at midnight on Saturday night, the city council has approved a cube designed by students at Kennesaw State University to drop on New Year's Eve for Marietta's first ever New Year's Eve ball drop, but additional details are being kept silent. So I guess you have to go to Marietta to find out what's inside the cube.
I would just say, who's having the chicken drop?
The chicken drop is at Gainesville, Georgia.
In Gainesville? Well, somebody better get a hold of that chicken, and if it's a hen, hold on to her, because with the price of eggs these days, I thought people are paying. Eggs are going like $5 or $6 or more a dozen. I mean, that's insane.
Well, the name of the chicken is Chuck.
Well,
but I personally would have named it Prissy.
Yeah, the widow hen.
Yeah, in Perry, Georgia, a buzzard is lowered. Savannah, Georgia, since 2014, the Savannah riverfront has hoisted up the cup on River Street, featuring the raising of a to-go cup. So instead of dropping, they're raising a cup in Savannah. Tallapoosa, Georgia, a stuffed possum named Spencer is lowered. Unadilla, Georgia, a hog is lowered at midnight. And last but certainly not least, in Winder, Georgia, a jug drop takes place at the Barrow County Museum. So there you go. You got
if y'all thought that we just spend our time on New Year's Eve sitting in the outhouse all night, well, you see, we are very active and busy here in southern Georgia.
Now the executive producer,
I'm in northeast Georgia.
The executive producer, as soon as this show is over, Renata is going to come down here because I have a file cabinet. And as you know, I had a little bit of a problem over the weekend with water leaking into my office. And apparently there's a rust stain that's now underneath the cabinet. So we got to move the cabinet, and she's going to take care of the rust stain. But in the process of doing that, I've been cleaning out this office of mine, and I've been finding all kinds of stuff here. If you go on my Facebook page, Joe, I don't know if you've seen it already, is a picture I posted on Facebook of when I graduated from kindergarten at the same school that you went to, Holy Rosary School.
Holy Rosary. Was Sister Gloria in that picture?
No, it was my mother and my father and me, and I'm wearing my little cap and gown hat there. And believe it or not, somebody actually wrote on my Facebook page saying, I guess you don't remember me, but I used to sit next to you in the same kindergarten class. And I said, "Oh my God, you had to be subjected to Mrs. Quinn as well."
Wait, now, did you have Mrs. Quinn for kindergarten or for first grade?
I had her for kindergarten, and I had her for second grade.
Oh,
I still remember.
Oh, you were tortured twice then.
My mother took me to the school. This was before the second grade semester began or whatever, and there was Mrs. Quinn, and she was behind a table with some of the other teachers, and she had to sign some form or whatever, and she said, "You wouldn't happen to know what class what class he's gonna be in the second grade," and looked straight up at us and said, "Oh, he's got me again, dearie." And I said to Renata, I said, only in stories about witches does the witch actually call you dearie.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I had Sister Gloria at Holy Rosary.
That was a nice. I think she was a nice nun.
She was
right?
nice. No, she was really nice. She was a very, very nice nun. And then we moved to the Bronx, and I went to public school for 1 year, and then went to Catholic school for second grade, where I had Sister Alice Michael. Okay. And the thing is that she had a boy. Well, she has Alice Michael. I'm not sure, if that was a her name, and then she took a saint's name. But there were times where she was nice, and there were times when she was horrible. So I don't know which one was the Alice nice and the Michael horrible, or was the Michael nice and the Alice horrible. But you had Sister Charles Edwards, so that really kind of just beats them
That was
all.
at St.
You
That
had,
was at St.
you
Benedict's during Catechism.
yeah,
By the way, here, I just mentioned that somebody on Facebook said that she said I was right. She said this was Deborah Falciani. I don't remember Deborah, but she said I was right there beside you. We were in the same class. So I wrote to her and I said, OMG, you suffered through Mrs. Quinn too. She just literally responded to me a few seconds ago. She said, Mrs. Quinn loved me. I was her little potato. Oh.
Oh God. Oh God. Well, listen. Before we keep going down this road where we wind up getting to the point where we all have to go, go see therapists to undo the damage of all of this. Uh, Let me just say, Happy New Year to you and to Renata, to your family, and a Happy New Year to everybody on the chat board and everybody watching this show. Uh, Another year has gone by. We were renewed, so we'll be on again in the new year. I renewed us. I thought about it, but I renewed us.
Now I wanted it. The other reason why I mentioned the clearing of my office and all the debris that I have cleaned out. I've been tossing stuff out all through the day today in the garbage. Now, one of the things that I did, Joe, is I tossed out about 15 years of BAMS. Now, for those people who don't know what BAMS is, when you're a member of the American Meteorological Society, each month they come out with a magazine with all kinds of information about meteorology. Mostly, BAMS consists of papers on various facets of meteorology, but it's a very, very thick. I mean, I'm holding up a BAMS right now. This is what comes in the mail, and I threw out, Joe, about 15 years worth of this. I almost had a hernia this afternoon. I must have thrown out. I did weigh it at one point when I was carrying one of them out. One of these big bunches of old magazines out that I just tossed in the garbage. They were like 20, 30 pounds. I must have gotten rid of like 60 pounds worth of magazines. I did save a few because there were a few that had some interesting articles that I wanted to keep. So out of, let's say, I don't know, like 100 or 120 I kept maybe like 5. But I had to. I'm kept this. This one is actually going to go in the garbage too. But you remember yesterday what we were talking about jet streams and how the media is calling them now atmospheric rivers.
Right.
Right. This is from the BAMS from February 2019, volume 100, number 2, and take a look what's on the front. What was on the cover of one of the articles. Rating atmospheric rivers.
Oh.
Can you believe that?
Yeah, I guess.
So there you go.
Yeah. Even they have to brand it.
Even they have to brand it as atmospheric, not rating jet streams, rating atmospheric rivers. So you see this, like so many of the others today, it's gone. Forget about it.
Yeah, I save trees because when I used to get them years ago, I rarely read them. So they just went into a pile, and then they wound up in the trash. So I just let them just do it online. If I want to go read something, I'll do it that way.
That's how I get them now. I get them online. They offered it to you online. I said, why kill another tree? I mean, just send it to me online, and that's how I'm getting them now, and I don't have to worry. But today, before I got rid of all of these, and again, it was like a ton of magazines. I said, okay, let me go through them and let me see if there's anything in any of these. And there were about 4 or 5 magazines that had some interesting papers and interesting studies. And I said, all right, I'll hold on to this. But the rest of them, boom, out.
Mm-hmm. Telly asks, why do we dislike the term? I mean, I don't know that I dislike the term. I guess from years of working with television, they take something that's pretty basic in weather and just make it sound apocalyptic. You know, and it's sort of presented that way so that the average person who doesn't know says, "Oh, now we have rivers in the atmosphere," or whatever. It's the branding part of it that bugs me. That's all.
Yeah. All
You know,
right.
we get, it's no big deal. Um, John says patience is not the ability to wait, but the ability to keep a good attitude while waiting. Well,
Yes.
that's a good thing to carry into the new year, to be more patient. Everyone did have a great Christmas, Alaska Railroad. Hopefully you had a great Christmas as well. Don't rub it in, Magnolia P, with the Pineapple Express, because I'm not a fan of pineapple. And on that particular note,
It is the last Joe and Joe of the year, believe it or not.
it is. So on to a new year, which hopefully medically for me, I don't break any more limbs, and everything else stays okay. Uh, so all the best to you, as I said, Joe. It's doing this show for me is such a joy. Some nights more than others because I get tired, but it's hard doing we do a show 5 days a week, and we do an hour show. It's all ad libbed. Okay, none of this is scripted. Joe and I do not talk to each other very much, if at all, during the day, unless there's something really important going on, or he has something I need to see, or if I have something that he needs to see. But we it's very, very hard to do an hour show where you're ad-libbing everything, and at the same time you're doing, got all this technical stuff that you got to do, and then there's the social media aspect that you got to do. So, but I would, I wish, in so many ways, I have said this to you many times, that I needed to be born. I needed to be about at least 10 years younger, if not 20 years younger, because I just relish this whole thing that we have, and I know, and our independence, and no longer being under some corporate thumb. That to me is the most, is one of the most important things out of all of this. So we got our show. We do what we want. We have a blast doing it, and we've got a great audience that comes night after night to watch, and we can't ask for more.
You're right, because that was one of the more stressful times of the year for me was, believe it or not, late September, early October. Why? Because that was the time when the news director would say, all right, all of you who would like to have Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, if you want those days off, put them in the let us know, and we will make a decision on a person by person basis, because sometimes you couldn't take off and on any of those holidays, and it was always annoying. Now I don't have to worry. Don't have to worry at all about
all the
about things.
weekends I worked, all the holidays I worked. I worked all
Right?
of I worked all of them, uh, except in recent years, in the last few years, where I was able, thanks to Brian, he always somehow finagled me to be able to be off. But yeah, it was years of working Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, uh, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. I didn't care about New Year's to begin with, so I was more than happy to work New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Sometimes I would work 3 shifts in a row and get paid, big bucks to do 3 shifts on a holiday. So
Right.
that was fine by me. But now, you know, uh, it's all our choice. It's all under our control, and we have another year of that ahead of us because, as I said, we were picked up by the network.
and no reason to worry also about getting that phone call with an impending storm saying you're going to have to work this weekend because of the big snowstorm, or you're going to have to work overnight and into the next day because we're going to have all hands on deck and that kind of thing. Forget it. It's not going to happen for you or me, Joe. We are able to watch these storms now from the comfort of our home. And also the best part for me, always guilt. I was always guilt ridden, because when we had those big snowstorms, I had to be at News 12, and guess who had to do the driveway and the back and everything else with the snowblower, Mrs. Rayo.
Mrs. Rayo.
And Mrs. Rayo does not need to do that to any degree anymore, because moi is now here instead of having to worry about all these things. So you don't get those 3 a.m. phone calls saying, you got to come in here now. And you look out the window and the snow is coming down. Holy how am I going to get to work? I have to drive through 5 inches of snow to get to Yonkers. No, I don't have to deal with that anymore. And this was my month when I had my retirement, Social Security retirement. So as far as I'm concerned, all of that is behind me now, folks. Don't need to worry about any more of those things. Let the younger folks have to worry about those things. You and I, Joe, needn't worry about those anymore.
No, and we don't do TikTok videos, which is even better. And we got 100 likes, and I only had to ask at the beginning of the show. I didn't have to ask again. So we got 100 likes, and that's great. And a couple of more would be nice too. Now we're 102. It's comfortable. Good. So on that note, folks, Happy New Year. We'll see you on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Most of you should be up and about. I don't do anything for New Year's Eve. I don't do anything for New Year's Day. So I will be.
Izzy D he's always on the chat board, and he also and many times he has contributed on the tip jar and everything. But Joe, he just hit a hot button with me. He said, Joe Rayo, no meteorologist really seems to have to work right now. The weather is just so easy. Even an 8-year-old kid can do it. Yeah, that's how it is now. That's how it is now. But I can assure you, Izzy, that when the weather turns like it did last weekend, with cold, bitter cold, and snow and rain and everything else, you're asked, could you come in, because we're going to need you, and I don't miss those days. I don't need that anymore. But thank you to David Fuller again, Steve LaPointe, Johnny Quest, Howard Hassel for all hitting Super Chat tonight, and we will be back with you in the new year of 2023.
Have a safe weekend. See you on Sunday. Night, everybody.
Bye.